It was a bright, golden morning, the kind that made everything shimmer with a little extra magic. Birds chirped outside the window, and sunlight streamed through the sheer curtains of Sophie's small but cozy home. It was the kind of morning that felt like a promise, a fresh start. But today wasn't just any day. Today was Max's birthday. Max was Sophie's golden retriever, 5 years old today, though to Sophie it felt like only yesterday that she had brought him home. She remembered that moment vividly. Max had been just a fluff ball back then, with oversized paws and curious eyes that seemed to peer straight into her soul. They'd bonded instantly. And now, 5 years later, their bond had grown deeper, stronger, something more than just pet and owner. They were soul companions. Sophie stretched as she got out of bed, glancing over to the corner where Max usually lay. But this morning, he was already up, sitting alert at the edge of her bed with his tail thumping against the wooden floor, his eyes fixed on her with excitement. He knew something was different. Maybe it was the scent of something delicious wafting from the kitchen, or maybe dogs just have a sixth sense for special days. "Good morning, birthday boy," Sophie said softly, reaching down to ruffle the fur behind Max's ears. "Today's your day," Max responded with a gentle bark and a little hop, his version of a morning dance. Sophie laughed. It was moments like this that reminded her why she wanted to make this day unforgettable. Max had been with her through everything: heartbreaks, job changes, even moving to a new city. Through it all, Max had been her constant, her joy. As she headed into the kitchen, she could feel Max's eyes on her, his footsteps padding quietly behind her. She opened the fridge and pulled out a few ingredients she had prepared the night before: eggs, shredded cheese, a little cooked turkey. This wasn't going to be just another morning meal. It was a birthday breakfast. Sophie had read dozens of dog blogs to find the perfect dog-friendly recipe, and while Max would probably be thrilled with a plain piece of toast, if she offered it with enough enthusiasm, she wanted more than that. She wanted to show him, in every little way, how loved he was. As the eggs sizzled in the pan, Sophie hummed a little tune, the same silly birthday song she'd sung each year on this day. Max sat beside her, his ears perked, his nose twitching, with anticipation. When the breakfast was finally ready, she placed the bowl in front of him and crouched down beside him. Bon appétit, birthday boy. Max didn't need any more encouragement. He dove into the food with gusto, and Sophie couldn't help but smile. Watching him eat with such joy, such unfiltered happiness, reminded her of how simple love can be. It doesn't need to be loud or flashy. Sometimes it's as simple as a warm breakfast, shared in the quiet of morning. After breakfast, Sophie reached under the dining table where she had hidden Max's gift, a brand-new plush toy shaped like a teddy bear, complete with a squeaker inside. Max had a weakness for anything soft and squeaky. His current favorite, a well-loved stuffed elephant, had long lost its stuffing and most of its ears. It was time for an upgrade. "Max, look what I got for you," Sophie said, holding out the toy. Max's eyes lit up. He trotted over, sniffed the bear, and then, with a burst of excitement, grabbed it in his mouth and began parading around the living room. The squeaker let out a high-pitched squeal with each bite, and Max responded with happy growls and wagging tail swishes. Sophie chuckled. "Guess that's a hit." She let him play for a bit while she cleaned up the kitchen, her heart full. These small things, the toy, the food, the wagging tail, they were the building blocks of something bigger. A life shared, a friendship nurtured. Later that morning, Sophie pulled out Max's leash and his favorite harness. "You ready for an adventure?" she asked, dangling the leash just slightly. Max's ears perked up, and he bounded toward her, tail wagging like a metronome set on high speed. Sophie clipped the leash onto his harness, and they stepped outside into the golden sunshine. But today, they weren't going on their usual walk. Sophie had planned something different. They were heading to the big park across town, the one with wide-open fields, a dog-friendly lake, and plenty of space to run. She had packed a small picnic bag with dog treats, a ball, a collapsible water bowl, and a blanket. Today was going to be about fun, freedom, and moments that mattered. As they reached the park, Max's excitement was through the roof. Sophie unclipped his leash and watched him burst into a run, his ears flopping, his body pure energy and joy. He chased birds, sniffed every tree, and finally returned to Sophie with his tongue hanging out and eyes gleaming. They played fetch, explored trails, and even made friends with a few other dogs. For Sophie, it wasn't just about entertaining Max. It was about soaking in these little slices of happiness. Every bounce of his paw, every joyful bark, it all added up to something irreplaceable. After a while, they settled under a shady tree. Sophie laid out the blanket and poured Max some water. He drank gratefully, then curled up beside her, resting his head on her lap. She stroked his back slowly, letting the breeze wash over them. "You having a good birthday, Max?" She whispered. Max let out a soft sigh, his eyes fluttering closed. And in that peaceful moment, Sophie knew. This wasn't just a day for Max. It was a day for both of them. A chance to pause and celebrate everything they meant to each other. The wind danced through the trees, rustling the leaves above them, as Sophie and Max sat in quiet companionship beneath their favorite oak. The world had slowed down. The buzz of the city faded behind them, replaced by the hum of nature and the steady rhythm of Max's breathing. Sophie looked down at him, curled beside her like he belonged to the earth and her all at once. "Chut, no," she whispered, tracing a finger through the golden fur behind his ear. "You've taught me more about happiness than anyone else ever has." Max didn't reply, of course, but he shifted slightly, pressing his head a little closer against her thigh. And in that silent gesture, Sophie felt the answer. They sat like that for a while, not needing to do anything, not needing to speak, just being together. But Sophie had one more surprise planned. Once they were home and Max had taken a quick nap, flopped across his favorite sunny spot near the window, Sophie tiptoed into the kitchen. She opened the cabinet above the fridge, careful not to let Max hear the rustling of bags. It would ruin the surprise. From inside, she pulled out something she'd been looking forward to all week: ingredients for Max's birthday cake. Now, let's be honest, dogs don't need cake. But this wasn't about need. It was about celebration, about doing something just because you love someone. Sophie had spent days combing through dog-friendly recipes, determined to find one that was both delicious and safe. She finally settled on a peanut butter and banana cake with a hint of honey. No sugar, no chocolate, just wholesome ingredients that Max would enjoy. As she mashed the bananas and stirred the batter, Sophie found herself smiling again. There was something almost childlike in the act, like baking for a best friend's birthday party when you were 10 years old. It brought joy before the celebration even started. Max eventually wandered into the kitchen, nose twitching at the scent of peanut butter and bananas wafting through the air. He tilted his head at Sophie, clearly curious, but unusually patient. "Almost done," she said with a grin. "Just wait a little longer." She poured the batter into a small bone-shaped cake mold she'd ordered online, then slid it into the oven. As it baked, Sophie sat with Max on the floor, brushing his fur and telling him stories about when he was younger. The time he stole her slipper and hid it in the garden, or the time he refused to go outside in the rain and pouted for 2 hours. Max, of course, didn't remember these things, but he listened with his whole body, his eyes fixed on her as if each word was a treat in itself. When the cake was ready, Sophie let it cool while she prepared a small corner of the living room. She hung a happy birthday banner across the wall. Nothing too flashy, just a pop of color and fun. She tied 2 balloons to Max's toy box and placed the new plush bear beside them. Then, she carefully decorated the cake with a few of Max's favorite dog biscuits and a single candle in the middle. Max sat politely, tail thumping, waiting for permission. Sophie placed the cake on the floor and lit the candle. "All right, Max," she said, crouching down beside him. "Ready?" She began to sing, soft, off-key, and with more love than rhythm. "Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Max. Happy birthday to you, Max." Wagged his tail so hard it thumped like a drum against the floor. Sophie laughed and leaned forward to blow out the candle for him. "Make a wish," she whispered. "But I think mine already came true." She sliced the cake into small, bite-sized pieces and let Max dig in. He was gentle at first, savoring each bite, then quickly forgot his manners and gobbled it up with abandon. Sophie didn't mind. She just watched him, her heart full. And as the last crumb disappeared and Max licked his chops, Sophie sat back and breathed in the moment. That was the thing about birthdays. They weren't about the cake or the decorations or even the presents. They were about love, presence, intention. And in that small, quiet room, decorated with dollar store streamers and lit by afternoon sun, Sophie felt like the richest person in the world. Later, as dusk crept in and the soft amber glow of evening filled the house, Sophie and Max settled in on the couch. She grabbed his favorite blanket, the one with little paw prints on it, and pulled it over both of them. Max let out a contented sigh and curled up beside her, his head on her lap once more. Sophie stroked his fur in slow, gentle patterns. "Did you have a good birthday, buddy?" Max didn't answer, but the way he leaned into her hand, the steady beat of his breath, the calm in his eyes, it was enough, more than enough. She picked up her phone and scrolled through the photos she'd taken that day. Max with his new toy, Max running in the field, Max looking confused at the birthday candle. Each image was a memory now, tucked into a digital album labeled simply, Max, 5 years old. She paused for a moment, then added one more note to the album's description. The year we celebrated love, not just age. Sophie knew that time was precious. Dogs didn't live forever, and their birthdays weren't guaranteed. But maybe that's what made them so special, the fleeting, fragile beauty of it all. She looked down at Max, his eyelids heavy with sleep, his body warm against hers. "Same time next year?" she whispered. Max gave one last, slow tail wag before dozing off completely. The morning after Max's birthday felt like a gentle echo of the day before. Sophie awoke to the soft sound of Max's paws padding across the wooden floor and the familiar, wet nose nudging her hand from beside the bed. It was a new day, but something lingered in the air. The tenderness of memory. She sat up, ruffling his ears. "Morning, birthday boy. Still riding the high from yesterday?" Max wagged his tail, eyes bright, his plush bear squeaking softly beneath his paw. It was rare for a toy to survive even a full day with him, but this one had a new kind of value now. Sophie smiled. Even Max, in his own way, knew yesterday was special. While she brewed her coffee, Sophie reflected on what had made the celebration feel so complete. It wasn't the decorations, or even the homemade cake. It was the connection. That deep, wordless exchange between hearts, something only dogs and their humans truly understood. After breakfast, Sophie did something unexpected. She pulled out her journal, the one she rarely opened anymore, and began to write. "Dear Max," she began, "you are the best thing that ever happened to me. Not because you're perfect. You're not. You shed like it's your full-time job, and you've ruined more shoes than I care to count. But you're loyal. You're kind. You're always there when I need you. And sometimes, even when I think I don't." She paused, brushing away a tear she didn't expect. This wasn't just about Max's birthday anymore. It was about celebrating the years they'd shared, the hardships they'd survived, the quiet moments that spoke louder than words. Later, that afternoon, Sophie decided to do something else, something she hadn't done in years. Print photos. She scrolled through her phone, selecting her favorites from yesterday. Max licking his cake. Max looking utterly confused by the balloon floating beside him. Max curled up with the bear. She chose 15 photos and sent them to a local print shop, requesting next-day pickup. Because these weren't just snapshots. They were memories that deserved to live outside a screen. That evening, as they walked through the neighborhood, Sophie noticed how many people smiled at Max. It wasn't unusual. Max was one of those dogs who carried sunshine with him. But today, Sophie looked at it differently. She realized how rare that light was. He makes people happy, she thought, just by existing. And maybe that was something worth celebrating every day, not just once a year. On their way back, Sophie stopped at the little park near her building. It was empty, quiet, the way she liked it. She let Max off leash, and he bounded through the grass like a puppy again, energized by the cool breeze and the scent of leaves. Then, out of nowhere, he paused, stood still. Sophie tensed for a moment. Was something wrong? But then she followed his gaze and saw it. Another dog, a small terrier, a little scruffy, with nervous energy and hesitant steps. It was followed closely by a girl, maybe 10 or 11 years old, gripping the leash tightly. Max didn't bark. He simply wagged his tail, calm, inviting. Sophie watched as the two dogs slowly approached each other, tails up, ears perked. And then, just like that, they started playing, chasing, tumbling, rolling in the grass like old friends reunited. The little girl smiled, visibly relaxing. She walked over and stood next to Sophie. "He's nice," she said, pointing at Max. Sophie nodded. "He is. I just got this one. His name's Milo. He's scared of everything." "Max used to be, too," Sophie replied gently, "but he taught me something really important." "What?" "That love is louder than fear." The girl looked thoughtful, petting Milo as he panted beside her. Then she gave a small smile and said, "That's cool." They watched the dogs for a while longer. Then the girl waved goodbye and walked off, Milo trotting beside her, just a little less nervous now. Sophie watched them disappear down the path, a warmth settling in her chest. That little interaction, that moment of shared understanding, it meant more than words could say. And it reminded her that birthdays weren't just about the ones we love, but also about the joy they give to the world, a ripple effect of kindness. When they got home, Max flopped down on the rug, clearly tired from the play. Sophie lay beside him, one hand resting on his belly, rising and falling with each breath. "You really are magic. You know that?" He groaned in agreement, his eyes drooping shut. Sophie took out her phone and made a note. Not just a list, not a to-do, but a plan, something she'd call Max's birthday ritual, a way to celebrate every year with the same intention. Max's birthday ritual. Yearly guide. Morning cuddle and special breakfast. New toy or gift he's never seen before. Outdoor adventure, always a new location, dog-friendly cake, baked with love photo tradition. Same pose every year. Letter to Max. Read aloud before bed. Donate to a local shelter. In Max's name. The last item gave her pause, but she liked the idea. Max had been a rescue. Someone, once upon a time, gave up on him. But Sophie never would. And maybe, in his honor, she could give another dog a second chance, too. She looked over at Max and whispered, "You're helping dogs you'll never even meet." And in that moment, she realized something profound. This birthday wasn't just a day of fun. It was a reminder, a call to love more deeply, to live more presently, and to give more freely. Because dogs don't count birthdays. They count belly rubs, playtime, shared meals, quiet evenings on the couch. They count us, and we, in return, should count every precious moment we get to spend with them. The next morning, Sophie sat at the kitchen table, sipping her coffee as Max lay at her feet, content and sleepy after 2 days of celebration. The light streamed through the window, casting golden stripes across the floor, the same shade as Max's fur. It felt like the universe itself was pausing to honor him. She reached down and scratched under his chin. "You have no idea how much you've changed my life," she whispered. Max blinked up at her with those deep, trusting eyes. There were no words, but his tail thumped once, gently, as if to say, "I know." That afternoon, Sophie picked up the photo prints she'd ordered, 15 snapshots of joy. She spread them out on the living room rug, each one a tiny time capsule. Max grinning with cake frosting on his nose. Max sitting politely with his birthday hat on, just moments before shaking it off. Max mid-leap in the park, ears flying like wings. She laughed softly. "We should make a scrapbook, Max, something we can look back on every year." So she did. She found an old leather-bound notebook, tucked away in a drawer, and gave it new purpose. With each photo she pasted in, she wrote a little note beside it, like captions, but more personal. "This was your face when you realized the cake was for you. Here you are with your new bear. You still haven't chewed off its ear. Amazing! You met a scared little terrier named Milo and somehow made him brave." Sophie realized she wasn't just creating a keepsake. She was preserving moments she never wanted to forget. Moments Max, with his short memory and big heart, would never know the way she did. But that didn't make them any less important. As she worked, Max lay nearby, chewing gently on his new toy, occasionally glancing up at her as if checking in. Just being near her was enough. That's what Sophie loved about him most. His ability to be happy simply because she was there. That evening, Sophie did something she had never done before. She went live on her small social media account, not for fame, not for attention, but to share what the past few days had meant. "Hi, everyone," she said, brushing hair out of her face nervously. "This is Max. He just turned 5. And I want to tell you what he's taught me about love, about time, and about celebrating life." Max was curled beside her on the couch, tail wagging lazily, as if he knew he was the star. Sophie continued, voice warm and steady. "Yesterday wasn't just about cake or toys. It was about showing the ones we love, even the furry ones, that they matter, that their presence in our lives isn't something we take for granted. Dogs don't ask for parties or presents or even special days, but they do notice when we slow down, when we smile at them instead of the screen, when we play fetch even if we're tired, or rub their belly even if we're busy." She paused, emotion thick in her throat. "They notice love, and they give it back 1,000 times over." She wrapped an arm around Max, holding him close. "So, if you're watching this, and you've got a dog, I hope you celebrate them. Not just on birthdays, but every day you get to have them." The comments poured in. Other dog parents, sharing. Photos, stories, tears. It was like a virtual campfire, glowing with shared emotion. And it hit Sophie. This story, her story with Max, wasn't just theirs anymore. It was part of something bigger. A reminder that, in a world often filled with noise and distraction, the love between a person and their dog could still break through. Quiet, sincere, powerful. That night, as they settled into bed, Sophie did one last thing. She opened her journal and wrote Max another letter. "Dear Max, thank you for reminding me what matters. Thank you for teaching me how to be still, for listening without words, for forgiving without pause, for being my shadow, my joy, my best friend. Your birthday reminded me of how fleeting life is, how quickly our days fill up with later and tomorrow and maybe next time. But you live differently. You live in now. And because of that, I want to try too. So next year, we'll do it again. The cake, the walk, the cuddles. But more importantly, we'll keep living in a way that honors you. I'll say yes more often. I'll pause to scratch your ears even when I'm busy. I'll laugh when you make messes and not worry about the floor. Because someday, it'll be your last birthday. And I don't want to realize too late that I missed it." She put the pen down and kissed Max on the forehead. He was already asleep, breathing slowly, his paw resting against her side. Sophie lay there in the dark, listening to his breathing, letting it ground her, letting it remind her that she was lucky. So lucky. In a world full of rushed mornings and endless to-do lists, she had this, a heartbeat beside her, steady and loyal, always waiting, always loving. She closed her eyes and whispered, "Good night, Max. I love you. So much." And for once, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt whole. A few weeks had passed since Max's birthday celebration, but its warmth lingered. The photos were now framed and displayed on the living room wall, right above Max's favorite spot on the rug. Sophie looked at them every day, not to remember something gone, but to relive something still alive, something real. That one birthday had transformed how she saw their life together. It wasn't about just one day a year anymore. It was about embracing every day like it mattered. Because to Max, they all did. So Sophie made changes, quiet but meaningful. She took longer walks with Max, often letting him lead. She started baking him little dog treats every weekend, experimenting with flavors, pumpkin, sweet potato, even apple and cinnamon. Max, ever the patient critic, taste-tested each one, with his signature tail wag of approval. Sometimes she'd catch herself staring at him during breakfast, when he was sprawled belly up on the kitchen tiles, or during sunsets when he'd rest his head on her lap. And in those moments, she'd remember what she'd promised: to be present, to celebrate life as Max did, not waiting for a birthday, but finding joy in the small things. One evening, as they sat together watching the sun dip low, she said out loud, "We should help others do this too." And from that thought, a new chapter began. Sophie launched a small blog, Pause and Celebration, a place where dog parents could share their birthday ideas, their own stories, and tips on how to make their pets feel extra loved. She wrote about Max's birthday in detail, sharing the recipes, the simple plans, the heartfelt moments. And to her surprise, it resonated. Emails poured in from people who had never thought to celebrate their dog's birthday, now excited to plan. 1. Others shared how they did celebrate but were touched by Sophie's personal touches. The letter writing, the photo book, the heartfelt reflections. She even received messages from people whose dogs had passed, thanking her for the reminder to cherish the time they had. It was emotional, healing, a small ripple of love that grew with every person who read Max's story. And Max? He didn't know he'd inspired an online movement. He didn't know that hundreds of dogs were now wearing party hats or digging into peanut butter cakes because of him. All he knew was that Sophie smiled more now, that their days were filled with more laughter, more snuggles, more random treats for no reason at all. To him, life was good, and that was enough. On Max's 6th birthday, Sophie didn't try to top the last one with something bigger or flashier. Instead, she made it even more them. She woke him with kisses and a homemade breakfast of scrambled eggs and bacon bits. She gave him a new plush friend, this time a floppy duck with an obnoxious squeaker Max adored. They spent the afternoon at the same park, chasing the same tennis ball beneath the same blue sky. She brought a picnic blanket and a tiny speaker, playing soft music while they lay side by side, Max panting happily, Sophie stroking his fur. The world faded. It was just them, again. That evening, Sophie pulled out the leather scrapbook, now with new photos and memories added. She flipped through the pages slowly, smiling at every page like it was a secret she got to keep. Max, as always, curled beside her, occasionally lifting his head when she laughed, then settling again, his eyes half closed in peace. Before bed, Sophie whispered something into his ear. "Thank you for choosing me." It wasn't about ownership anymore. It never really was. It was about companionship. A bond formed not with words, but with years of shared mornings and muddy paws and quiet understanding. Max's story isn't just Max's story. It's every dog's story. Every loyal pup that waits at the door, that watches with quiet devotion, that gives their whole heart without asking for anything in return. And Sophie's story? It's a reminder, a guide, a love letter to every dog parent who's ever wondered how to give back even a fraction of the love their dog gives them. So here's the truth. You don't need a Pinterest-perfect party or an Instagram-worthy cake. You just need your dog, your time, and your love. The rest is icing, peanut butter icing, if your pup's anything like Max. Here's your dog's birthday guide. Final recap. Let's wrap up with a quick, heartfelt guide for anyone inspired by Sophie and Max. Start with a special meal. Begin their day with something they don't usually get. A homemade breakfast or a treat they love shows you're thinking of them in a new way. Pick the perfect gift. It doesn't have to be expensive. It just has to be them. A toy, a bed, a bone, something that brings them joy. Plan a meaningful outing, a walk, a hike, a park visit. The location matters less than your time and energy. Let them lead the way. Let them explore. Create a quiet memory. Sit. Be still. Let your dog curl into you and breathe together. Dogs may not remember the decorations, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. Book a dog-safe cake. There are plenty of recipes out there that are fun and healthy. Baking it yourself adds love they may not understand, but they'll feel it. Capture the day. Take photos. Write a letter. Save a memento. One day, you'll be glad you did. Celebrate every day. And finally, don't wait for birthdays. Celebrate them just for being there. Celebrate the tail wags, the silly face plants, the soft sighs when they rest beside you. Because one day, your dog's last birthday will come, and when it does, you'll want to know you didn't miss a thing. So the next time your dog's birthday comes around, don't think about what you should do. Think about what they would love. Make it theirs. Make it about them. And above all, be present. Because if there's one thing we can learn from dogs like Max, it's that love, true, loyal, uncomplicated love, is always in the now. Sophie and Max's story may have started with a birthday, but it never really ended. It became a way of life. And that's the kind of love that lasts forever. Dogs truly are the most loyal companions in our lives. What did you think of this heartwarming story? Let us know in the comments. Like the video and share it with your friends. Subscribe to our channel for daily emotional dog stories. Turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Click here to watch the next story of love, loyalty, and the incredible bond we share with our paw-some friends.